Facebook Live. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Mortgage Coach Tuesday interview. Every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Pacific, we're here to put on the mortgage industry's best sales meeting. Today, I have as my wingman, my co-host, but today the special guest is Todd Bookspan. What's up, my man?
You know, I'm so excited to be here. I feel really honored to be back on a Tuesday call, kind of all where it started with you and I back, gosh, probably in like 2010 or something. So love doing our Friday calls together, but it's kind of fun to have the Tuesday audience tuning in and you and I getting to chat with them.
Absolutely. So if you're on this call or you're watching the recording, Todd and I co-host a mastermind. It's called Productivity Mastermind every Friday, 9 o'clock. I'm not going to put a link down below because just join the group on Facebook. It's Productivity Mastermind. And we also broadcast this live in our Facebook group. So if you are on Facebook, let's make this as collaborative and mastermind-like as possible. Put your questions down below in comments. Put your best takeaways below. And if Todd shares something that's just valuable for everybody, share it with everybody. So Todd, I think today the plan is to talk about strategic business planning for both mortgage professionals and realtors. Is that what you got going?
That sounds like a great idea, Dave. I think it's so critical as we head into a year that both industries know is going to shift, that if we're not really thinking about how we can plan, I know it's like super boring, it's not sexy, but planning is what's going to be required if you're going to actually have growth or even sustain the business you had last year. I've got no doubt, I'm 100% convicted on this, so I'm glad that you guys are here to learn what isn't really that exciting. It's not something new and shiny that other people might be talking about. This is what's going to get you there. That's my belief.
Yeah, well, so by the way, the only correction I have there is it's not like the market's going to shift. The shift has happened. You know, there's been a seismic shift in the mortgage space. I actually talked about this with an interview I did with Jason Frazier yesterday. I just posted that this morning in our Facebook group. It's the most recent video on our YouTube channel. And I think it was titled, "You Don't Have As Much Time as You Think You Do." And that message was, I saw Jason do a rant to loan officers and realtors, and I was like, oh my God, him and I need to do that together. So really, you really don't have as much time as you think you do. And strategic planning has never been more important than it is right now coming into 2019. So my vision, I'm going to hand it off to Todd. He's going to walk you through a strategic planning session. But my hope is that this would be a call that you could do with your realtors. So even if you're watching this by yourself, Todd and I are going to execute this in a way that you could literally say, hey, realtors, come into my meeting. Let's go through this planning session with Todd Bookspan. And it would give you a competitive advantage. It would help you get more referrals from those agents. And it would help both of you prepare your business for the shift that's already happened. So with that, Todd, I'm gonna hand it off to you. If I have some color or if we get a question from the audience, I'll jump in.
Awesome. So let me kind of give you the outline of where I think we're heading today, right? So my goal, as Dave said, is to give you something that you could totally sit down and show parts of this presentation to your realtor. So it's going to be broken into a couple of parts. You'll see a part on business planning. You'll see a part on your ideal week and tracking. And so I didn't build it as a fluid presentation like I would normally do. I actually am putting it into bite-sized chunks for all of you. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to make it available to all of you so you actually have the PowerPoint presentation afterwards. I'll show you how to get that. And I'm going to pull off a video just because I want to make sure, it seems like there's some Zoom technical issues today. I want to make sure that pushing the extra of you seeing my smiling face talk isn't getting in the way. I'm going to actually share my screen and run you guys through this presentation. So if it seems different than what you've seen me present before, that's because it is. I made it just special for today and I segmented it slightly different, and I'll kind of throw out some more resources at the end. So jump in, stay tuned, ask questions because we will open it up for Q&A at the end, but I'm going to share my screen first. So we should see my PowerPoint come up here right now, and then I'm going to pull myself off. This is sort of how it works in behind the scenes when we get things. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about who I am because I think most of you know, but the bottom line is I'm Todd Bookspan. I'm the founder of Win by Noon. I'm the co-host of the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind with none other than Dave Savage on Fridays. And really, I'm going to present to you based off of what I've learned over the past 17 years in the business, the mortgage business specifically, where I've primarily focused on working with realtors for most of my career, although I did work with investors and financial advisors pretty significantly as well. And I'm bringing you experience that I have from being a $100 million producer myself. I've closed over $600 million worth of transactions, a few thousand loans. I still run a team that I lead with vision and coach. My wife runs that with a business partner. I'm out of the day-to-day, but I still have my finger on the pulse. I've been coaching clients, superstars really for the last couple of years. So I'm bringing that perspective as well. And then ultimately the perspective now of over 2,500 Win by Noon users split pretty evenly between realtors and loan officers, and what I've learned from them and what I've learned from my experience of doing exactly what we're going to talk about today, which is business planning with realtors. So Dave came up with this fancy title, and I even put the flames back in it: 3 ways to turn business planning with realtors into more business. And I think it's really important because when I say to turn it into more business, I'm not talking about just for you, the loan officer. I'm also actually talking about turning it into more business for the real estate agent. Because again, we're in this together. This isn't an individual game. We're playing this game together. So let's make sure that you guys are aware of that as I sort of talk about it. And so let me run you through the plan. It's not going to be me talking for an hour, so no one, don't get worried about that. I do talk really fast. I'm going to try to slow down. My Toastmasters coach reminded me that the average person talks 150 words a minute. The average person can listen to 450 words a minute and still comprehend. He says I probably talk about 300 words a minute, and then I have gusts over 500. So I will try to slow down to make sure that we get there. But ultimately, I divided this into 3 pieces, right? The why. Like, why do we need to do this? And it's really important when you are thinking about this for yourself, as well as when you are thinking about it for teaching it with a realtor, is that you really need to make sure that you help them internalize why they are doing it. Also the how, right? Like literally, these are the 3 ways with the little flames by them of how we're going to do it. So I'm going to walk you guys through that. And then I'm going to throw out some more resources there, because in the end, I don't want this to be you watching something and going, holy smokes, I could never do that. My goal is to help make this a little bit easier for you. So I always start off with a couple of quotes. I'm going to start off with one today. Marshall Goldsmith said, "What got you here won't get you there," right? That's really important. Dave just told you that the market has already shifted, right? Most people are seeing that. And I think it's really critical that you accept that. And, you know, it's kind of funny. I think that we all have a book of excuses, right? We all have these things that we continue to tell ourselves. We all know that we have business partners who continue to tell themselves these same things. And what I would encourage you to do is throw it out, right? Let's get rid of that book of excuses by figuring out why this is important, right? So really, we got to talk about that for just a couple of minutes, right? This whole idea of why. And I love, there's been a lot of conversation in the mortgage coach community about your personal why. There's definitely some videos that Dave and I have done. He's got a why worksheet that's in the community. And I would look into that as kind of a side note, right? That's another little bonus thing that there's content on that you could certainly teach or use for yourself. But I'm really talking about why we need to help our realtors with this as part of our business strategy. Like, why would a realtor want to meet with you, a loan officer, to actually help them with this business planning thing when you're not a realtor? And there's that disconnect, right? And so our whole goal is to figure out how to bridge this disconnect with them, right? You've heard this saying before, you've got to get them on the bus, right? You've got to get them on the bus with you. And so we really want to spend a couple of minutes sort of talking about why people don't business plan. And, you know, it's kind of a funny challenge, right? We know that most people think they should have one, right? I've taught business planning to groups, large groups over the years, and also one-on-one. And I used to ask people, how many of you have a business plan? And like, people were embarrassed. Like I was shaming my audience. And so I don't ask that anymore. What I tell them is that most people think they should have one. In fact, depending on the survey you read, it's above 90%. Like if I ask an audience, 90% of the people will raise their hand and say they think they should have one. Yet the disconnect is that most people do not, right? Less than 10% of people in our businesses have a plan. There was a recent statistic on this, and this is really critical to listen to. There was a recent statistic that 94% of loan officers wake up in the morning with no plan for their day. And anytime I present this to realtors, they say this statistic is true for them. So I would use the statistic when I'm talking to a realtor as well. As a result, 91% have inconsistent month-over-month business. And so even though they all know they should have one, they don't. And so what that tells you is that the 6% of people who have a plan have more consistent business. And then there's a few percent that actually get lucky. But the bottom line is in 2019, you're not going to be the one who gets lucky unless you have a plan, nor is your realtor. And so again, we go back to this question of why. And what I would tell you is that there's some great examples you can give. And so the one I've been giving lately when I've been speaking is an example about NASA. And I give the example about NASA when I'm teaching to a crowd because everyone knows what NASA is, right? The National Space Agency, right? And back in the 60s, I think you guys know the story. In 1961, President Kennedy got up there, JFK, and said, we are going to the moon. And one of the things that they realized if they were going to be successful when they got to the moon was they needed a space pen, okay? And so, it looks like a normal pen, but they needed a pen that could actually write upside down in zero gravity, and they needed to develop this pen, and they did a lot of research. I always quiz audiences, and they all guess all over the place, and they might say $1 million or whatever, but ultimately the price was $10 million. So think about that. In the 1960s, $10 million, that's like probably $1 billion today. And so this is a disconnect because at the same time, we were in a space race with Russia, and Russia didn't have $10 million to spend on their pen. So what did they do? They used a pencil, right? And so I bring this up to kind of highlight the point that one of the biggest reasons that people don't do business planning is because they overthink it, and we got to keep it simple. So I'm always going to draw us back to that analogy because you need to be able to connect the dots and help with the why. And I'll kind of walk through a couple of other things that I see getting in people's way, right? It's boring. I already said that. It's not sexy. It's not a lot of fun. It's super overwhelming, right? I mean, I know my first business plan was 28 pages, so I never looked at it, right? So we're going to talk about how to do this in a simple way so it's not overwhelming to people. We have SOS. They have SOS. That is shiny object syndrome, right? We are so distracted. I see it all the time, right? In our Facebook group right now, yes, we have a huge opportunity to talk about the seller buy down strategy that Dave's done a great job of pitching and creating tools and a really actionable step-by-step plan that he's got in LinkedIn in his article on it. But most of the shiny objects we are distracted by cost money, right? I see people all the time asking, what CRM should I get that's better than my current one? I see people asking, where can I buy leads? Are you using this new strategy on Facebook? These are the kind of questions that are shiny objects and taking you away from the tactics that are tried and true that we know are going to get us through to next year. And so you've got to figure out how do you connect with your realtor. You have to figure out what is she or he doing that's distracting her from really understanding why business planning is going to be so important next year, right? We all want the latest and greatest. And I want to talk about the tried and true today, right? I mean, that is so critical. I laughed, right? Yesterday I presented at NAMBA, the National Association of Minority Mortgage Bankers of America. They had a great event out in California. And I said, hey, how many of you want the easy button? And they, a bunch of people raised their hand, right? But you have to understand that there is no easy button for a business plan. And therefore most people don't want one because they don't think that they actually need it, right? And so when it comes to this easy button, I was kind of thinking through like, hey, what does an easy button look like? And you have to think about it from a realtor's perspective, right? It looks like this. It looks like walking the dog out your car window. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't look like it's that difficult. In fact, I think it'd be harder than walking a dog on the street because my arm would get tired. But again, we're just really thinking through, what it is and, how to get there. And so I could have named this the top 3 easy buttons for next year. But the bottom line is it's not going to be easy, right? And so, again, I think what you need to do when I'm kind of getting on my coach's hat and say, okay, how are you going to get your realtors on board for business planning is you got to figure out what is holding them up in their mind. What is the thing that didn't get them there and figure out how to help them get on the bus and get over the hurdle. And use any of the examples or any of the excuses that I figured out to see if that's how it is. I've got a saying I've been using right now with my group coaching group, which is how you show up here is how you show up everywhere. until proven otherwise. And so what I tend to find is if someone's late for my group coaching, the funny thing is they're late every week, right? They make an excuse the first time, but then they continue to show up late. If someone gets in their homework late, then I assume the first time it maybe be an accident, but then if they turn it in late every time, then that's just how they show up everywhere. And so I'm going to encourage you to think through, how are you showing up? I'm going to encourage you to think, how do I view this? What's my why behind it? And then walk your realtor through it. Because ultimately, if you don't do that, you can't really talk through the how. Now, what I realized is that my biggest roadblock to teaching realtors how to plan their business was the fact that it was really too much, right? I think the whole key for us in 2019 is to work smarter, not harder. I know a lot of you who I see on this call were at Sales Mastery, and Todd Duncan did a great job at Sales Mastery of really re-engaging people in the tried and true and really figuring out, how do I work smarter with those things and not work harder next year? And some of you may have to work harder for a bit so that you can get to the point where you can actually coast a little bit. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of statistics out there. There's a lot of doom and gloomers out there who think that a lot of people will be out of our business soon. So I got to get you guys over the hump. I got to get the realtors over the hump. I'm a huge data nerd. So I've been looking at a lot of statistics, and I won't bore you with too many of those statistics today, but I will sort of highlight a few. One interesting statistic is that there's 550,000 NMLS licensed or registered loan officers after May of this year. And then the last NAR survey was that there was 1.3 million realtors. So there's like 2.4 realtors out there for every one of us, right? And we know that the Pareto principle, right, that 20% of the business is normally done by 80% of the people in most industries, is not really accurate for real estate. I've seen anywhere from 90 to 93% of the business is done by 7 to 10% of the realtors. And so think through how you can get them to work smarter and not harder by creating a business plan to get there. I think the biggest challenge for your realtors, and maybe for you, is you don't know where to start. Like, what is it that I want in my business plan? And so I started by just asking Siri what a business plan was, because in today's day and age, you're either going to ask Siri or Alexa or whatever, any of those other voice friends we have out there and the other systems that I don't own. But Siri said it pretty succinctly: a document setting out a business's future objectives and strategy for achieving them. Now, why did I waste your time and have you look at this slide? I want you to share this with your realtors, because ultimately you need to think about strategies to get you to the objectives you desire, right? Objective in this case, I'm going to substitute the word goal. And what are the strategies I need to reach my goals? And I would actually add in there, what are the strategies and activities for achieving them? So I don't want you to overthink it, right? Again, I'm not talking about this big, thick, 28-page business plan. And so here is where we're going to start, okay? Let's put on our business planning hats for a second, and then now I'm going to go into education mode with you guys. So hopefully you're all ready. I can't see your smiling faces. It's a whole lot easier when I teach this to a room full of people, because I can see who is doing what, and I can see you guys all smiling. Or I can see you all getting overwhelmed. But ultimately, we are going to start really simply. So this is a snippet from Win by Noon. So I apologize in advance if you think this is a Win by Noon commercial, because it's really not, because I'm going to make these tools available to you outside of purchasing anything. But ultimately, when it comes to business planning for you, regardless of the industry you're in, we're really just going to start off with, what are our goals, right? Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? But not everyone can figure out how to get there. And so since I'm talking to you and your loan officers and real estate agents, what I want to talk about is our family served, which is a business goal, in production, right? So family served is a number, right? It's closed transactions, right? Production is the dollar volume of what you're doing. And then I've put in here another opportunity for you to pick a third business goal. Now, do you have to have three? No. What's the most common I see? How much money I want to make next year, right? That's what most people put on there. I do see things like, I want to have an assistant. I want to start a team. I see other things like that. I see people who occasionally put in a fourth goal, right? That's certainly a possibility. You can totally do that. There's no reason that you can't add in more. I'm just telling you that most people, if you have more goals than three, get distracted, right? I showed you that shiny object syndrome. Let's focus on what we can focus on. Now, remember, goals need to be smart. I'm not going to spend a ton of time running you guys through the whole acronym of SMART, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, time sensitive, realistic, time sensitive. I guess I got to make sure I spell it in the right order, but ultimately it should be something that you can measure, right? These are all things that I think you can measure or say yes or no to. And then I put personal goals on there because I think we have to look at our life more, right? That's maybe vacation days with your family, right? That could be savings goal for you personally. How much money do I want to save in the bank? So just think through what you can do here that is a measurable goal that you can hold yourself accountable. And this is for 2019, right? That is really critical. Now, one of the challenges I find that people have, and the reason that this is overwhelming, is because they're like, well, how do I pick a number, right? What am I going to look at? And so these should be relatively easy for most people to get, right? You should have, if you're a loan officer, you should have a closed loan report you can get from your company, right? If you're a real estate agent, you should be able to get a closed accounting from your broker on what it is that you closed last year. And it's really critical that you know, and you decide at this point, okay, great. I closed 40 transactions in 2019, and that was for $10 million. And then you have to decide, am I going to push for the same number next year? Am I going to push for slightly less, or am I going to push for slightly more, right? I always think that you should have slightly a stretch goal, right? So you could say it should be a SMARTS goal with the last S being stretch, right? I don't think that we're getting in this to come in second place. You know, I've got a trophy up behind me. It's a little ceramic trophy and it says you tried, right? I don't want people to try, but I will tell you that a lot of people I know are going to shoot for the same numbers in 2019 as they did in 2018. And I don't think that's a cop-out in a declining market, but you get to decide that. So the thing that you have to remember is, how do I figure out that goal? Well, look at history first, because history leaves clues, and that'll help you get to where you're trying to go. Same thing with production. And so just think about that. And you could just take a wild number and pull it out of your head, right? When I decided in my first business plan in 2003, I wanted to be a $100 million producer, I picked that number out because someone else told me that's a big deal in the mortgage business to be a $100 million producer. I have a lot of realtors that I've coached that want to do $10 million. That's a big deal in real estate. Certainly depends on your market that you're in, but just sort of keep that piece in mind, that you're going to set a goal based on either a random number or on history. And I prefer history because that makes it the more realistic. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, super simple. All we're doing is, what is the target? Now, if you want a copy of these slides and the tool that I'm showing you that I've cut down into pieces, just text WBN to 33222. I realize that oftentimes I talk fast, as I said, and so people are trying to write it down. They're like, oh, shoot, go back to that slide. So I'm going to give you guys the slides so you'll have them, and then I will also give you a copy of the tool so that you can print it out and use it yourself and with your business partners. I'll show this again, so don't feel like if you miss it that you missed it, but it's just WBN to 33222 for those of you who are on the phone and not watching the screen. Now, one of the things that we saw before in series definitions is that—
Hey, Todd, real
yes,
quick,
sir.
Could you go back to that just one more time? I want to make sure
yes,
everybody really got that. So again, everybody, it's 33222, and we will add that to the chat. Go
Perfect.
ahead.
I appreciate that, Mr. Savage, always making sure that we're doing this the best way. And so when I was talking to Siri, right, Siri said that a business plan has future objectives, which I've now called goals, and that we have to have strategies for achieving them, right? And I also said those could be activities. And so here's our strategies. Our strategies are going to be our projects that we're going to put in there. And so you have to have a project planning sheet. Now, again, I'll throw in there that the other piece that you'll see, which I'm not showing a picture of, is an idea, like a brain dump of ideas, right? We have too many ideas, all these shiny objects. We're going to get those out on a piece of paper. So one of the things you're going to do in order to get to this project list is you're going to do what I call a brain dump. And a brain dump is take all the ideas that you've heard about out in the marketplace, right? Whatever you saw someone else doing on Facebook, whatever you heard the realtor across town is doing, whatever you heard the #1 realtor at your company who's in Tennessee is doing, you're going to write down all of these projects. And then you're just going to determine which ones are the most important today, right? And those are going to be your top 3, right? We don't need to have 25 projects going at once. In fact, most people should focus on one project, finish it, and move on to the next. What I tend to find is most people in sales are a little bit distracted all over the place, and having 2 or 3 projects is actually okay, because I can actually work on 2 or 3 projects at a time. But when I get beyond that, nothing gets done. When I get beyond that, I get overwhelmed. When I get beyond that, in the end, nothing happens. I always say I'm the king of having 80% completed projects, and my whole goal right now is to get it all done. And so I stay focused on the narrowest list possible. And so here you'll have a brain dump of all those projects, so you can look at those later and determine what's my next project. And so the whole point of having this project list, this whole brain dump of ideas is that every time you hear one, you're just going to put it on the list. So when you finish a project, you can go back to your list, you can reprioritize. What is most important today, right? What do I think is most important? Because I can tell you that what I had on my project list at the beginning of 2018 is different than what's on my project list at the end of 2018 when it comes to the ordering of what's most important. And I never want you to say, just because you put it on this list, that you have to complete it. If you start working on a project on this list and you're partway through it, or you haven't started on it and you have a different priority that comes in that's more important, then take it off the list, put it back onto the idea list as a future project. One more thing I would throw out there is that you have an opportunity with your accountability partner, right? With whoever your partner is that's bringing you this business planning idea, to have him or her help you as your accountability partner. They can help you collaborate on this. What I tend to find is oftentimes there's multiple people in a relatively close proximity who are working on the same projects at the same time, and maybe collaboration might be the key to get you over the hump. And so I would think through that whole piece. And remember, when it comes to a project, you have to kind of be pretty descriptive of what it is. Like, hey, what am I trying to do? You have to plan a completion date, right? In the coaching space, it's called by when, right? Hey, when am I going to get this done? And then you're going to write out what the milestones are. And so this is actually a full page sheet that has all the milestones listed out. You may have one project that's so big that you need one whole piece of paper and all these are the milestones on it, right? To break it down. And then you're going to break down each milestone into steps, right? And so again, it's not a super complex tool, right? I've got spreadsheets that can do this too. But what I tend to find is that people just taking the time to get it out of their head and onto paper and written out will help you determine what are the steps, what is the order of the steps, and then what is the time frame. So if you think about it so far, we've got what are the goals for the year, and then we have what are the other things that we're going to need to create or improve in order to get there. So keep in mind that a project could just be learning mortgage coach because you are not proficient at it. A project could be cleaning up your CRM. So it could be something you already have. It might not be anything new, but you've got to make that a priority. It's interesting because when I'm hearing people talk, when people are explaining to me what the challenges they're having, oftentimes they hadn't thought through anything past, oh, this is a roadblock. They haven't really thought through, hey, I really do want to learn mortgage coach and I want to learn it by the end of November. And then the milestone is going to be, the first step is milestone is going to be to go to the website, right? And look at the videos, right? That's a step, right? Reprioritize which one. Maybe it's send out a email to the help desk and ask them what the best way to go is. It's going to be go to the YouTube channel and look at the new loan officer YouTube instructions, right? There's all sorts of resources there. And so it's breaking it down and walking through it regardless of the industry you're in is knowing what do I have to do to get there. Now, here's where I start to lose people. Now, one of the things that I'm a huge believer in is that once you have the annual goal, you've got to actually move it to a quarterly goal. Now, again, people are like, well, how do I figure it out? What if it's seasonal? What if my last January was in February, March were bad and I think this one will be good? Don't overthink it, right? Keep it simple, right? Think back to the pencil versus the US space pen. And so what I normally do is the first time you do this, take that number that you put onto the annual sheet and just divide it by 4. Now, I know some of you are perfectionists and that's going to be stressful because you know that the first quarter there's snow in your area and you're going to do less business. Well, great. Well, if you know what percentage of your business you did in the first quarter, right? You would take your first quarter family served and you would divide that by the total number of families served for the year. That's your percentage. You could multiply that times your new goal for the year and put in a number that's seasonally adjusted. Again, don't overthink it. Pick a number so you can get there. And the reason that we break it down quarterly is that most people, when they look too far in the future, fail. And the reason that they fail is because it's not realistic to them. They can't reach out and touch it. So a year is even oftentimes hard for people, because some of you are saying, gosh, I don't know where I'm going to be at the end of the year. How can I really look out there? And then I would tell you that what I would do is I would break it down to the quarter. If the year is overwhelming, then start here and say, well, what do I just want to do in the next 3 months? And so you've got to work backwards. And now when I start getting into these other results and activities, now one of the things I'll throw out at the end is, how do you get more details on this? I'm not going to take the time, I don't have it today, to explain each one of these different things and what they mean that we do in Win by Noon. But just know I'll make it available to you. I'll give you access to where I've got recordings of all of these in detail. So I'm giving it to you. Just know I'm going to blow over it today due to time. So again, you've got to figure out then in between, what are the things I need to do day in and day out in order to reach my goal. So I gave you both ends already. I gave you the big number on one side. And if you can see me, I'm holding my hand out to the left, and I'm giving you the projects that are going to take to get there. And the bridge in between are the activities that I have to do to get to those results. And again, so when people start new in tracking, you only can put in here what you know. So again, if you're a realtor or a loan officer, you can look at how many leads you had, and you can divide that by 12, and you can put in, what you want for your leads. If you know what you had as a loan officer for applications, you can put that in there. If you're a realtor and you know what you had for pre-approved buyers or you had for listings, you can grab that and you can put that in here. And so again, as you're looking at this, what you're seeing is this is the real estate agent version of it. So I will be providing you with both a loan officer and a realtor version. Side note is we have an insurance agent version as well. So if you do work closely with any insurance agents, there's a version of that too. And so ultimately, we're going to continue to break it down. You start big and you go smaller. We start with the big goal, and then we start with what are the results that'll get there. And we know for a loan officer that that's leads, loan applications, pre-approved buyers, and closed transactions. We know for a realtor that what you need to track are buyers and seller presentations, how many of those buyers got qualified, how many of those listing presentations turned into listings, and then how many closed, right? Then we're going to go one step further, and we're going to talk about activities. Now, this is where it gets super overwhelming, super boring to people, and things that people don't want to do. And that is this whole idea of tracking activities. And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but just know that I believe that you start tracking the number of dials that you make, the number of people that you actually communicate with, a quality conversation, and then the number of people I meet with live. And then you'll see that, of course, I'm a huge believer in annual mortgage reviews. We throw that in there as an activity for loan officers. We throw in there, of course, TCA, total cost analysis, because I'm a big, huge fan of Mortgage Coach. And then for realtors, you see here, we've added for you real estate reviews and database ads. And so again, as we go through this, we're going to actually be able to break it down in the future where you'll know exactly how many people you need to call in order to get a closed family. You'll know as a realtor how many buyer presentations you need to get a qualified buyer to get a buyer into a home. Right? You'll know all these details because we're going to start tracking. And again, if we don't know it now as we start, that's okay. My group coaching group just finished their first month. So a month ago, they all saw this, their eyes all rolled in the back of their head. They didn't understand it. But now that we got into month 2 and they've got 30 days of results of tracking the activities, then now they're actually able to put in real numbers. And then we'll also throw personal goals in there, things like sleep and exercise, morning routine, evening routine. These are just huge things that we all know we need to do. On time is from the E-Myth, right? It's Michael Gerber. You've got to schedule time to work on your business, not in your business. You won't be able to actually do your projects unless you have on-time schedule to work on them. And then the last piece is really critical relationships. And it's funny, we sort of threw it in there not thinking it would be anything big, and people have actually really, really loved it. It's who do I really want to make sure this quarter I connect with, right? Who is someone that I may want to see? And for me, it's typically family and a couple of friends.
Hey, Todd, real quick. I just want to make sure that as the community asks questions in chat, we do reward them with some answers here and there. Someone just came in and asked, what's a good rule of thumb for a loan officer for the portion of leads to pre-quals to funded loans? Any rule of thumb you can give us there?
You know what? Here's what I love about it, right? It was interesting because I got a question at my presentation yesterday about sort of, well, why, how do you pick a number to go with? And I always say you pick with where you went before. If you don't know where you went before, then you pick out of the air, is what most people do, or you pick kind of what you think is a rule of thumb, which is what this person's asking. My belief is that everybody's different. And here's the hard part of answering that question is because, use my team as an example. I've got loan officers on my team who work 100% of their time, well, like let's call it 95% of their time with one team that does online lead generation only. And they do get some, 5% of Sphere stuff. And then I've got people who sit in real estate offices and the realtors are coming in and bringing them business. And then over here on the other extreme, I've got someone who works at a builder, actually two loan officers who work in a builder's office, where people literally just walk in, they hand them their loan application and say, I'm ready to buy. Well, their conversion rates are way different, right? The person who is in the builder has to talk to less people, meet with less people in order to close a transaction versus the person who's doing all these internet leads, bad credit, chasing people down, doing activity. So there's no great rule of thumb. I'll throw out my email address at the end. It's just todd@winbynoon.com. Email me what your business looks like, and then I'm happy to speak into that. But just know one of the things I think that is really, really critical, a lot of coaches think you should just do a certain number of everything and then you'll be successful over here. And I just don't think that you look like the person sitting at the office next door versus the other loan officer out there. So I know that's a non-answer and a long non-answer. But the bottom line is you got to figure it out for yourself. And once you figure out yourself, then you're just striving for a little bit of improvement every month. As Darren Hardy says, the compound effect, right? So if I knew that I had to talk to 10 buyers to get one pre-qualified buyer to get one closed loan or whatever that number looks like, that's probably a bad example. It's more like 10. I normally see 10 leads to 6 pre-qualified buyers to 3 close. That's what I've been seeing lately. But again, send me your numbers and I'll take a look at it.
So I just want to make sure everybody got that. It's measure it. Most important thing is that you're measuring where you're at and then you're working to incrementally improve it. And what you heard from Todd just now was he's netting out 30%. And that's not at all uncommon. Keep in mind, some of those loans were unfundable. So he may have had a 70% conversion rate on the fundable loans, but the net is 30. But the most important thing for everybody, measure it and it will improve. Back at you. And by the way, keep the questions coming, everybody.
All right. So I love getting questions like that. And I know, again, some of this it's not new and shiny, right? I mean, I think that's the biggest key to remember as you're thinking through this for yourself and thinking through who you're going to meet with. But I'll tell you kind of a couple of critical things, and I'm going to kind of
Todd, one more thing that just hit me, because I really wanted to make this session something that would be valuable for you to engage with a partner. And by the way, if you engage with strategic planning with your partner and you started measuring these key metrics, whether it was, new business conversion, and by the way, past customer, what percentage of your past customers are you creating referrals with? You're really getting to know your partner's metrics better too. And you're getting them to think about it. So just the gift of measurement, just the gift of having this meeting and this conversation together with your real estate agent is, I think, super powerful. Anyways, back to you, Todd.
Love it. No, that's great. That's great sharpening. And so I'm gonna kind of pick up some speed here so we can continue to have Q&A at the end. But I kind of want to get you guys through some statistics as well that you can share with your partners that'll help hopefully get them excited about it. And I'm going to sort of dig into the other part of it, which is how to help them structure their week in order to grow their business, right? So certainly one part of it is the actual doing of the plan. And then the other part of it is trying to figure out with them kind of where are they going to capture these ideas. And so that's why I kind of come up with this way to make an idea, this idea that I made of having a new tool for you guys to use to sit down with them and they may be able to capture their ideas. Again, we're going to talk about, I already talked about prioritizing their new ideas, and then you're the one who's going to offer yourself as the person to help them. I think that's really the critical piece, and it's normally overlooked. I reach out to Frank Blakely. He's a member of the mortgage coach community, and I shot him just a text and said, hey, are you still doing what you were doing before, right? You never know if someone's made it through it. And I actually felt like I knew the answer. And he just said, hey, yeah, I've been working with several agents who thank me many times for being different than other lenders, adding value. We're up to 7 agents that are on a 30-minute call with me once a week. And he said that he just had a lunch and learn, and he's got more agents asking to join, and he's going to be adding them to a second group. He said they as agents are starting to feel with what we felt last year in margin compression in their market as it changes. And so they need you to help prioritize ideas. So Frank has provided himself as that sounding board, and I'm going to encourage you guys to do that as well. And then I also throw in the A word, right? And the A word for me is accountability. And people hate accountability, right? It's the one thing we all know we need, but we don't actually want it, right? It's really hard to sell someone what they need if they don't want it. And I would just tell you that the accountability piece is really key. And that's why I say you got to keep it simple, right? You're not, you can't make it such a complex thing. You just have to help them figure out this question, right? Do you know what you have to do every day to achieve your goals? And so I took this when I saw a top producing realtor speaking to a room about a month ago. And then he got up and he went through his numbers. So it goes back to the question that the audience just asked. He went through and said, I've got to knock on 100 doors to get a closed transaction. He said, I've got to actually meet with eight buyers in order to get one closed buyer in this market, right? He went through, he knew what his numbers were, and you have to know yours. That's what he was encouraging this group. And so he started tracking. That was his solution, because ultimately in the end, like, we didn't all wake up thinking we're going to be loan officers and realtors when we grew up, right? I mean, that's just not a real thing. I mean, I don't think when any of us were younger, maybe some of you millennials, you could buy one of these onesies. But people get into this business to set their own hours, right? And so this is transition number 2, kind of in the next piece that you can talk to people about. The reason I divide it into 2 pieces is because if you talk about it like I am right now, they're going to fall asleep. If you talk about it like I am right now, they're going to run. And so you can break it into 2 segments. The first one is really just build the plan. And then now the second part of it is really to remind them of this, right? They got into the real estate business. You got into your business to set your own hours. And that is the exact reason that most people fail. I mean, think about that for a second. I mean, it's so true. We all fail because we don't actually have a schedule that we have to show up and work. And so we've got to build that. Because ultimately what we all do is we chase our tail if we don't actually set a schedule for ourselves. And by having your accountability partner, by thinking through what does my ideal look like, you can build this. And so think through with them, what are the focus days that they need to do? And a focus day in my mind is putting one activity in one day together so that you're more efficient and you're more consistent with getting it done. And so the easiest one for all of us, regardless of our industry, is we need to update our clients. And so let's just pick Tuesday for that day, because I don't care what day you do these activities. I just care that you do them and you do them consistently. And I would tell you that when I interview top producers, regardless of their industry, when they focus on one activity in one day and they own it as that day, they get it done because they've laid it out there to the world. Hey, Tuesday's my day. I'm going to update you on your transaction. And again, I've got scripts for this for realtors and for loan officers that'll be available here at the end. And it'll walk you through exactly how to do it. But ultimately, you have to think through, are you doing these things? Yes or no? And then if the answer is yes, then the second question is, are you doing it consistently? And if you're not doing it consistently, it's probably because you don't have focus days. And so what I mean by that is am I really updating my whole pipeline every week on their transaction? And so we just divided in every day. There's going to be some different focus day. And again, I'll get you these slides. And this was how I ran my business as a loan officer. And so this is sort of what the mornings looked like and how I divided it up. There's things you have to do every day, right? As a loan officer, every day you've got to call leads that haven't applied. You have to call applications that haven't been converted. And you also have to make sure that you get those people who you haven't converted to pre-qual, get that missing pay stub, get those tax returns, whatever that is. Then you can do this activity. And again, I'm not going to go through those now, but you'll have access to this later. And then you can react the rest of the day, right? The biggest challenge is we tend to open up our phone in the morning and we tend to react to whatever's most important in there. And I would really encourage you to think through, what does your day look like? And I'll give you a couple of tools for that. Here is the realtor version of the ideal week. Again, I'll give you access to this. Again, there's same things that realtors have to, you've got to prospect your clients every day. You've got to make database calls every day. And then you can divide it up and do some of the similar things that your loan officer who you're meeting with is doing as well, to make sure that they are consistent and efficient with everything that they do. And then in the afternoon, again, you can react. And I call reacting actually meeting with people. And I know that may sound really weird, but what I found is when I interviewed the top agents, lead prospecting was their number one thing, and they would lead prospect every morning. And if they had someone who asked them to show them a house in the morning, they would say no. What they would say is this: I have a commitment at that time. It's the number one compliment I get after I speak and I teach this script. People don't like, oh, I'm currently assisting a client or I've got a meeting at that time, when they really aren't or they really don't. But you know what? You do have a commitment in the morning. You do have a commitment to those activities. That commitment's to yourself. It's to your client. to make sure that you get him or her over the finish line. It's to your partner because she or he is expecting you to help get their client over the finish line. And it's to you and your family. So again, own this script. I have a commitment at that time. Dave and I started our journey together as Darren Hardy, Insane Productivity with Mortgage Coach. And what Darren says, you get what you tolerate. So if you tolerate people interrupting your time that should be your most valuable time, then it's going to continue to happen because life will organize around the boundaries that you set. I'm going to blow through these numbers really fast because it's pretty fascinating. And again, you'll have access to these slides. The reason I always talk about these activities and I spend time on it is because Salesforce.com, which most of you know is one of the biggest CRM companies out there, when people put leads in there, and this is every industry across the world, when people put leads in there, 47% of them never get called. So again, the reason I say you have to call your leads every day is because 47% of your leads are never getting called. That's even once, right? And we know we've got to call them more times. And people are always wondering, well, how many times do you have to call? There's a study from MIT, 6 times, 90% likely to get your lead. Chris Smith, Dave's had him on here for Mortgage Coach, great call that he did before. In the conversion code, his book, he says if you call 6 times, you're 94% likely to get someone. But most loan officers actually only call their clients 1 or 2 times in all of my surveys. You've got to call them all 6 times if you're going to get them across the finish line. One of the reasons that we're going to talk about conversion rates in a minute and tracking is because if you don't know what your conversion rates are, right, the question that the person asked earlier, how are you going to know what activities to focus on today in order to get there? And these numbers are kind of staggering since most people don't do it. I even had a loan officer tell me last year that if he finds a lead in his text or in his email that's more than a week old and he forgot to call, he just deletes it and pretends it never happened. So we're going to call all leads 6 times. Now remember, of course, we're in a texting world too. Texts are open 99% of the time. The average response time is only 90 seconds, but only 45% response rate. So the new trick is that we learned from Steve Sims, who, if you haven't seen him, check out his book, Blue Fishing. Dave's had him on here as well. Send him a video email, right? Instead of just texting them, hey, your appraisal's in, and it's at $50,000 or whatever it is, send them a video text. Hey, super excited that your appraisal's in. Again, whether you're a loan officer or a realtor, this is easy to do. And do it in video so they see your face and your smile and they're connecting with you. How much time does the average adult spend texting? 23 hours a week. Ouch. Blow through it. So in the end, you've really got to track these activities. I already showed it sort of on the planner there, but ultimately here you are, you have your ideal week, and then we're just going to add these in and we're going to track them as we go along. Again, whether you're a realtor or a loan officer, you're going to track the results, and then you're going to do the conversion rates that I mentioned, because going back to the question that we had is if you're going to be able to convert people, if you're going to be able to figure out what activities are working, how many of those activities do I have to do, you really have to be looking at your conversion rates on a monthly basis. And then over time, it'll average out. So you'll be able to figure out what makes sense. Now, this is hard work. I know it. I told you up front, it's not sexy. It's not the easy button, that there's no silver bullet, that we're easily distracted. I know you guys would much rather have someone tell you how many leads and how to generate them on Facebook. But if you're not going to actually figure out how many of those leads do you need, how many times do you have to call them in order to get a closed result, then it doesn't really matter. And so this is the blocking and tackling that's going to help you get to your goal that you want to set for this year. Now, I'll throw a couple things out there and then we'll do Q&A for the last 10 minutes. Number one is people like, Todd, I don't want to do this on paper. So we do have an app version of Win by Noon that's been spotted out in the wild. That's not my phone. That's my app developer's phone. So I know it exists. And in theory, any day I will be playing with it. But ultimately, that'll make it easy because it'll determine your conversion rates for you. I said I would give you guys more resources at the end, so let me just run you through them in 60 seconds so that we have some time for Q&A. There's that text number again for the slides and the business planning tool. I'll also make sure I give you access to the other videos that I talk through that give you the scripts for all of these things. Gives you the script if you're a realtor for your annual real estate review. Gives you a script if you're a loan officer for the annual mortgage review. Gives you all the details that you'll need to be more successful with these focus days that I pitched. Some of you are saying, well, what is Win by Noon? It's just a great business planning tool. And I'm finding that the loan officers who are using Win by Noon with their realtors like Frank Blakely are having really great results. So I threw together a quick offer. Normally it's $70 plus shipping for 2 copies, but you can get 1 copy of each for $50 with free shipping. Just go to winbynoon.com/mortgage coach. I'll make sure that Dave puts that down below too. lastly, but not least, like those of you who are like super committed to this, who are like, all right, Todd, this sounds pretty good, is I'm hosting a live certification so that you can actually come in, get certified to teach this out in public, whether it's in front of a room of 50 realtors, whether it's to a mastermind, whether if you're a realtor leader and you want to be able to teach it to your team, whether you're a realtor and you want to teach it to your branch, whether you're a branch manager in the mortgage space and want to teach it to your loan officers, a team leader in the mortgage space, or you just want to teach it one-on-one. This will be really the way to come in, get a deep dive into Win by Noon and these topics. It'll be a great opportunity to learn how to present it, and you'll actually leave with a business plan for 12 months of how to go out and do it with all of the PowerPoints and all of the conversations and all of the accountability scripted out for you. So it's going to be a great opportunity. If you go to that website, it gives you more details and the ability to connect with me to get more. And last but not least, there's the slide that has it all. So I'm going to leave that up there. I'm going to turn my video back on. I started talking really fast there at the end to make sure I got it done. And I don't know, Dave, how do we do?
Boom, you got it done. So guys, hopefully you got some takeaways, you got some value, you got a lot of reminders. Business planning, I doubt if it's new to many people on this call, although if you're new to the mortgage business and new to business, it could be a whole new concept for you. But to me, the biggest takeaways are just the reminder that little things make a difference, you know, and following through. The other thing I love about what Todd and I are doing here is the accountability piece. You know, I'm gleaning back to when John Downs adopted Mortgage Coach as a team. One of the ways he created accountability for himself is he showed it to his partners. He said, hey, realtors, let me show you a new experience that I'm going to deliver to every pre-approval that you have. So he put it out there, and he turned his business partner into an accountability partner. I can't think of a better strategy than doing business planning, you know, and even if they've already done business planning, you know, and it's a good relationship that you have, schedule a business planning session. So I think there's a lot of power in this. I did put a post in the Facebook group, Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind, asking people what their conversion rates are. So for the person that asked that question, hopefully we'll get a number of loan officers that will actually go to that post and share it. If you're on this call live, or if you're listening to the recording, please go in there. And it wouldn't, if you have like direct to consumer leads, that's obviously going to be a very different conversion. Try to, you know, if it's a referral based lead or a lead conversion or a consumer direct lead, let us know. But hopefully that will be a thread that gets filled up. So the person that asked that question, I still stand by what Todd said, but hopefully you'll get some answers from others in the community. So I'm going to look for questions. Todd, anything you want to say while I'm looking for some questions?
I think you nailed it right there, Dave, is that when you put it out there to your partners, then you're going to hold yourself accountable to that standard, right? So go back to the focus days. If you tell your partners and your clients, I'm going to call you every Tuesday with an update, you're going to start doing it because you've told them you're going to do it, right? That is really critical. If you don't put, if you just sort of half commit to it, then you're just not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. And I think that is a risk that we all run. We don't want to end up short because we didn't really put it all out there. And again, if you're not business planning for yourself, if you're not tracking for yourself, if you're not doing these things for yourself, you're not going to be able to teach it and share it with others. And I just think that there's so much opportunity to grow there in 2019 because we continue to hear from the marketplace that that's what people want.
No doubt. So I am showing the mastermind group on my screen right now. Just want to urge you guys, participate. If you're on this call, that's a place to ask questions. All the time I have people now that email me and they're like asking me a question. And I'm saying, hey, post that question in the group. And not only will you get an answer from me, you'll get an answer from everybody else. I stand by the fact that the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind is one of the most valuable places where you can be on Facebook and make money because you get ideas. Also want to remind everybody, had a few people ask, is this call being recorded? Absolutely. Think of the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel is Netflix for mortgage professionals. The only difference between this video platform and Netflix is you'll get entertained and you'll make money. Today's call will be right here. So under the Tuesday interviews, we'll be posting today's call. It'll be up there by the end of the day. And remember, every single Friday, 9 o'clock Pacific, Todd and I are here to deliver value. So Todd, if you wouldn't mind, because we broadcast this call in Facebook, we will put a reminder, and if you could put both links in here, Todd, after today's call. And if you guys have any questions for Todd, you can reach out to him through the channels that he talked about. Also, you can post questions in here. If anybody takes action on this and you go out and you do a Todd Bookspan Realtor planning session and you had a success story, bring that back, share it in the group, let us know what worked. If you had challenges or struggles and you have a question, let us know what challenges and struggles you have. So Todd, any questions you see in chat that you want to make sure we hit before we break?
Oh, there I am. I couldn't even see myself, and all of a sudden Siri started talking to me on my computer, so I apologize for that. You know, I'm really hopeful that you found some inspiration and some value in what is a tried and true opportunity for you to add value, not only to your own business, not only to people around you, but to your business partners. And I'm truly committed in our community to continue to push this message throughout 2019, because I really do know that it was the number one thing I did for my own business. It's the number one thing I'm seeing my clients do in their business. And I just believe with all of my heart that if you can be a giver, that you can be actually great at it yourself, that everyone's going to win. And I love the opportunity that I had here to be here on Tuesday, Dave. I really do appreciate it. I love the fact that the community has kind of gotten this groundswell around what we've been doing in the productivity mastermind group. And, you know, really the bottom line is in the end is we're all here to help each other grow, right? Think abundantly, and let's make sure that we all make 2019 truly a great year. It's going to be a challenging year, and some of you aren't going to make it through the year. But I want you to, I think Dave wants you to, let's make it happen.
Hey, by the way, Jeremy, you've raised your hand. Did you have a quick question? Jeremy Hasley. All right, well, I tried to unmute you, Jeremy. If anybody else does have a question, you can raise your hand. Highly recommend you guys take action on this. If you have a professional coach, you know, like a building champions coach, a coach that coaches you, highly recommend that you add to the list not only your own strategic planning, but help, you know, tell your coach, I want to do my strategic planning and I want to turn that into a competitive advantage with my partners, my CPAs, my referral partners. Hold me accountable to making that happen. So go back and tell your coach today that this is something that you need to make an advantage. We look forward to your success stories. Todd, 1 minute left. Any last questions?
1 minute left. That was like a huge takeaway, and we waited till the very end as people are jumping off. One of the things you need to do is know that this is coaching system agnostic, right? It doesn't matter to me who your coach is, what system you believe in. This works regardless of who your coach is, right? The Win by Noon as a planner itself, as a separate piece, it works with all of these folks. Yesterday, Cindy Ertman spoke after I did, and she gave a testimonial to me when I spoke about that. She's got her top originators in her program actually using Win by Noon. And so engage your coach, right? I mean, make sure that you're getting him or her to help you with this. And if you don't have a coach, then that's where the accountability partner comes in. That's why you go to your agent. I can tell you that Frank Blakely has grown himself over the past year of having a weekly accountability call with those agents. And I can tell you that I know he started out with 8 or 9. He says he has 7 now, which just tells me that not all of them made it. But guess what? 7 did. And I promise you, I bet their business is way better because of it. So obviously, you know, I'm super passionate about it. Reach out to me. Easiest way, since you're probably watching this in Facebook, is just ping me on a direct message there, or you've got my email address, todd@winbynoon.com. But again, Dave, thanks for the opportunity, and thank you guys for engaging over this hour. I know it flew by. I know I squeezed a lot in, so hopefully that didn't overwhelm you, but just know that I'm here to answer questions and get you through it in 2019.
Right on. And as you leave today, if you could just let us know, did we surpass your expectations with value and insights? Get some solid takeaways. If you're new to the community and you want a demo on Mortgage Coach, click the last one. Todd Bookspan, thank you very much, brother. By the way, will you be on this Friday's call?
I will be here on Friday. I'm excited for that, so we can I don't know what we're talking about. Have we made a plan yet?
I don't think we've decided. If you do have something you want to make sure we focus on this Friday, Todd will be there for sure. I'm traveling on Friday, but I think I'll be there. So look forward to seeing everybody on Friday. By the way, Todd, we should maybe consider doing unique value propositions.
All right, I'm totally on that. I walk my group coaching people, program folks through UVP. Let's do that for sure. And then let's just do some Q&A on this. So if you did watch this and you're like, holy smokes, Todd, you went way too fast. That was way too much information. We can answer some questions there too.
All right. And we will definitely be talking about unique value propositions this Friday at 9 o'clock.
All right. We
Why
overblew.
they're important and what are some good ones. Take care.